Hello. This is What If Luffy Was Trained by Rayleigh Early. Please comment your fanfic ideas below. Next part coming soon and enjoy the fanfic. Somewhere in East Blue. An old man with white hair reaching his shoulders, as well as a bushy goatee. He had vertical scar across his left eye. He was wearing round wire-frame glasses, an orange shirt, tan shorts with black spots all over them, and sandals. He also has a sword on his side. He is currently resting in a small boat. Looking like an easy target for the many threats that inhabit these dangerous waters, from pirates to sea kings. But should anyone or anything attack this seemingly harmless old man, they would likely find themselves dead in a matter of seconds. This old man is none other than the legendary Dark King Silvers Rayleigh. The first mate of the even more infamous Gold Roger, the Pirate King. Rayleigh is one of the last few remaining members of that once powerful pirate crew. Rayleigh had decided to take a vacation from coating ships in Sabati Archipelago. He also wanted a breather from his friend Haki, who owns the bar Harem's at. 3 hours later, Rayleigh's boat had jerked suddenly and Rayleigh opened his eyes. Looking around, he observed that his boat had taken him to an island. He disembarked his boat and walked to the nearest dock worker he could find to ask where he had ended up. "Excuse me, my fine gentleman. Might I ask you a question? Where is this town? I had fallen asleep in my boat and it took me here of its own accord," Rayleigh asked, a kind smile on his face the entire time. The man looked at him oddly. Who falls asleep on a boat and lets it go where it will? That is not safe. "Well sir, you're docked in Fuchsia village, in the Goa kingdom. I hope that helps you. I have to get back to work. Good day," the man said as he left to return to his duties. Rayleigh waved the man off. "Thanks a lot, that's all I needed to know." He continued walking through the town, enjoying its peace and quiet. What he really wanted right now was a nice drink. He found a little bar called Party's Bar. He walked in and took a seat at the bar, waiting for the waitress to come and offer him a drink. The waitress walked up to him with a mug in her hand. "How can I help you, sir? Would you like a drink, food, or both?" the woman asked. She was a pretty young woman, with greenish hair, orange checkered shirt with black sleeves, as well as bandana in her hair. "I'll have a mug of ale, thank you my fine young lady," Rayleigh thanked her. Makino blushed a little at the praise from such a handsome older man. "Oh, I'm sorry, where are my manners? My name is Makino, and I own this bar," she answered his unspoken question. As soon as she finished that statement, a young boy of about 6 years old jumped up on the bar and pointed his finger into Rayleigh's face. "You better not be hitting on Makino. She's too good for you, old man," the boy accused. Rayleigh looked at the boy, then the finger inches from his face, then at Makino, who had an apologetic yet slightly embarrassed look on her face. "Ha ha ha ha. Don't worry my boy. I'm too old for your friend here, I just get overly friendly sometimes," Rayleigh said, trying to ease the small child's suspicions. The boy nodded and got back into his seat and went back to drinking his juice. "You better not. I have my eye on you," Luffy said, glaring at the old man one more time for emphasis. The boy was average height for a child of his apparent age. He had black hair and black eyes. Wearing a white shirt with the image and word anchor on it, as well as some blue knee-length shorts. He seemed to be very friendly with the bartender here. "You know kid, it takes a lot of courage to do what you did to someone like me. What's your name kid?" Rayleigh asked. "Me? I'm Monkey D. Luffy. I'm gonna be Pirate King," Luffy said, stating his ambition and dream with absolutely zero inhibitions. He did not care if this old man laughed. He'd make it or he'd die trying and he would be happy with it either way. Stroking his beard, Rayleigh looked into the boy's eyes and asked, "Do you think you can do it? There are dangers out there in those seas you couldn't imagine, not even in your worst nightmares. Do you think you can conquer those seas?" Rayleigh asked, patiently waited for the boy to answer. "Conquer? I don't want to conquer anything old man. I just believe that the Pirate King has the most freedom on the seas," Luffy said, smiling like an idiot the whole time. Rayleigh was honestly surprised. He could almost see his old captain standing behind the boy with his hand on his shoulder. Rayleigh knew what he had to do. He had to take this boy under his wing, help him reach his ambition. "You know Luffy, I think you can do it. You've impressed this old man. That is not an easy thing to do, let me tell you," Rayleigh said as he put his hands on the boy's shoulder. "How would you like to sail the seas with me and learn the ways of the pirate? I'll teach you everything you need to know and then some. You will be a powerful man when I am done with you," Rayleigh asked, giving Luffy time to consider. "Hey. Hold on a minute here. Just who are you? I don't think the boy's grandfather would like you just up and taking Luffy away," Makino shouted, causing the few heads in the bar to look their way. Rayleigh stroked his beard and thought. His grandfather is Monkey D. Garp, yes. Makino nodded. "I figured they were related when the boy told me his name. I don't have to worry about him. I know how to evade that man." "You don't have to worry either, Makino," I just want to help the boy survive to reach his dream. How about it, Luffy, you want to go? Rayleigh asked Luffy again. Luffy looked from Rayleigh to Makino, then sat up and said, I'm sorry Makino, you know it's my dream to become a strong pirate. He can help me. I gotta go. Makino sighed. She knew she couldn't change the boy's mind when it was set, and she knew she couldn't physically stop this man from taking Luffy away. She doubted anyone here could. He seemed to have an aura about him that screamed power. And she did not want to test his patience. I suppose I have no choice. I can't win when Luffy has his mind set on something. You better keep him safe, old man. You hear me? Makino said. She knew it was a threat as empty as Rayleigh's current mug of ale. Don't worry Makino, I will protect him as if it were my own blood. This I swear to you, Rayleigh promised. Ready to go, Luffy? We can leave shortly. I just need to buy a bigger boat and supplies for the voyage. Rayleigh said, leading Luffy out the door. Luffy turned and waved goodbye to Makino the last time. Makino waved back, forcing a smile on her face. She would have to tell Garp about this, she thought to herself as she wiped her tears away. Rayleigh led Luffy to the docks where he found a fishmonger and boat salesman and bought a nice fishing boat that could easily support them. He bought some food and water that would last them a few weeks. Then he and Luffy boarded the boat and Rayleigh started rowing out to sea when he sensed a rather large life form approaching the boat. He turned around and seen a large eel-like sea king glaring at them hungrily. It's the lord of the coast, old man. We're gonna die. Luffy was panicking. He had seen this creature end many a people's adventures and lives. Is that any way for the future pirate king to act, Luffy? Rayleigh asked. He could understand though. This had to be frightening to a child of his age. Don't worry, I will take care of it. Rayleigh said with an air of finality. Rayleigh stood up and locked eyes with the beast. As it was about to attack, it suddenly felt an incredible sense of impending doom. Its pupils dilated and it dived back into the water with a haste Luffy had never before seen in the monster. What did you do, old man? How did you make it run away? I've never seen it so scared in ever. Luffy asked, excitedly. Rayleigh sat back down and grabbed the oars and began rowing away from the coast again. That, my boy, is just one of many things I will be teaching you as my apprentice. So just relax, it's going to take us a while to get to where we're going. Rayleigh said. 2 long arduous months at sea, only stopping when absolutely necessary for supplies. They finally seen their destination on the horizon. A small relatively safe island in the New World. This island lies in red-haired Shanks' turf, a yonko that was almost like family to Rayleigh. So there should be no problems with him and his apprentice camping out here for the foreseeable future. The island was probably about 5 miles in diameter, the weather was relatively stable by New World standards. The boat had finally beached and they both disembarked feeling grateful to finally be on solid land. Rayleigh ordered Luffy to pull the boat as far onto land as he could. Luffy nodded and grabbed hold, pulling as hard as he could, making it surprising far up the beach. Rayleigh had made it crystal clear to Luffy that when he gave an order it was to be followed, that is if he wanted to be taught. So Luffy decided it was in his best interest to obey his commands. Rayleigh watched, the boy has good strength for a child of his age. I will turn that into monstrous power given enough time and dedication. Rayleigh thought to himself. At about the same time that Rayleigh and Luffy had set foot on their island. The large marine boat was mooring in Fuchsia village. When it was finally docked, a large man with a vice admiral's marine coat with the word justice emblazoned on the back. He had short-cut gray hair and matching goatee. He had a visible scar down the left side of his face. He walked through town, nodding or waving at the locals. He found the place he was headed to and entered Makino's party's bar, taking a seat in front of the bar. He called her over. Makino? How are you doing? Where's my grandson hiding now? Garp asked. Makino gave a soft sob as she ran over to Garp. I'm so sorry, Garp-san. I couldn't stop him. The man took Luffy away 2 months ago. But I had no way to contact you, so Luffy could be anywhere. Miniko was nearly in tears. Both at losing Luffy and fearful of Garp's anger. Garp had frozen. He couldn't even begin to believe what he just heard. Luffy has been kidnapped. Who would do it? Who even know who Luffy was? 2 months ago, what the hell have I been doing all this time? Garp was seething in rage, his teeth grinding, the mug in his hand, exploding under the undue pressure of Garp's cannonball-crushing grip. Makino was backing away, fearing the worst. Garp spotted this and attempted to calm himself down. I'm sorry Makino, this isn't your fault. If it was someone after Luffy, then I doubt you could have done anything. I should have given you a den mushi to contact me in case something like this happened. Can you at least tell me what this man who took Luffy looked like? Makino nodded. 5 minutes later, Garp was back on his boat. They were heading back to Marineford, the military headquarters of the Marines. One of the most powerful and secure buildings in all the world. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, also known as Sengoku the Buddha. His had a black afro under his hat, which curiously had a statue of a seagull, the symbol of the Marines. A thin black mustache and a tightly braided beard that hung down to his waist. The man was busy fighting the greatest foe of any powerful leader. Who is this foe, you ask? Is it Whitebeard? No. Is it Kaido? No, it's paperwork. The eternal undying foe of any great leader. Sengoku looked up from his paperwork, sensing Garp storming to his office. The next moment his door was blown to splinters by an extremely angry Garp. Garp. What is it now? Can't you see I'm busy? Sengoku sighed in frustration. Garp was always so emotional. This is no goddamn joke. I'm not here to mess around, Sengoku. I need your help on a personal issue. Garp shouted, slamming his fist into Sengoku's desk, cracking the fine wood. What's wrong, Garp? It seems important if you're this upset and actually want help on a personal issue. Sengoku asked, giving Garp his full attention. My grandson, Luffy. He's been kidnapped by the Dark King. That's what my damned problem is. Garp growled at Sengoku. Sengoku's eyes widened in shocked. This is bad indeed. How did Rayleigh even learn about your grandson? I mean, it's not exactly common knowledge where you had him hidden. I don't know, but it happened 2 months ago. What can I do at this point? Garp asked, sliding down into his seat. The stress finally getting to him. I guess I could order CP9 to look into it, they may be able to find him. But you know as well as I that they could never take him back from someone like Rayleigh. Sengoku offered. No. No way. You keep that assassin squad away from my grandson. They would be more likely to kill him than they would be to save him. That Lucci guy especially. He's broken. He kills innocent people as easily as he kills criminals. And you wonder why my son does what he does. Garp said, adamantly. Don't get me started on that bastard son of yours. He and his army took another island in South Blue last week. Back with the protagonist. A few hours landing. The sun was just reaching high noon and the two had finished eating their lunch. A nice meal consisting of cooked wild boar. Luffy. Now that you have had a good filling meal, I want to start your training. You showed good strength from what I can tell, seeing how far you pulled that boat up. That was not an easy task for one so young. Rayleigh complimented the boy. Luffy smiled a radiant smile. I'm going to start with physical training, since you are too young to actually learn any of the more advanced skills I have to teach you. Understand? Rayleigh asked. He wanted to make sure Luffy understands everything he teaches him before moving on with the next thing on the list. Sure, old man. I need to be stronger to learn your cool powers. Luffy answered the question. Rayleigh nodded with a bright smile on his face. Yes, you're exactly right, my boy. So we are going to start with endurance training. Get to running around this island. I want to see how long you can run before you have to stop. Rayleigh ordered. Luffy nodded and began running. Luffy ran for roughly 2 hours before having to stop and rest. Rayleigh nodded, it was a good starting point. After a short rest, Rayleigh stood up. How do you feel? Are you too tired to continue training, Luffy? Do you need water? Rayleigh asked. No way, old man, I can go on. But water would be nice, please. Rayleigh handed him a glass of water and he gulped it down. Okay, enough playing around, Luffy. I want you to give me 100 reps of each of these exercises. Push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, pull-ups. Rayleigh showed him to a good tree branch for the pull-ups. I also want you to punch and kick this tree 100 times each. Understood? Rayleigh asked. Luffy nodded. A year has passed since Luffy started training with Rayleigh. Luffy is now 7 years old and looks like a boy 3 or 4 years older. Lean, strong. His fists calloused and tough. Luffy was becoming self-sufficient, so Rayleigh allowed him to hunt his own food more often. It was good practice for when he was out on his own. Rayleigh was standing on beach watching the ocean when he seen a large red and gold boat. It had a large Jolly Roger across its front sail. A skull with a red eye patch over its left eye. And 2 crossed sabers. What are we doing, Captain? This island's deserted. Why the sudden interest in this island? Ben Beckman asked his captain. Ben Beckman is the first mate of the Yonko, red-haired Shanks. Second in command of the Red Force and her crew. He has shoulder-length black hair worn in a ponytail. Wears a black shirt with green pants and a yellow sash around his waist. Has a long rifle on his waist as if it were a sword. If you look closely, you can see a boat there. I'm just curious who's calling one of our islands home. That is all. If they're not here to cause trouble, they can stay, hell, we may even party with them. Shanks answered. Ben nodded his understanding. Shanks is a tall man of moderate build. He has short red hair as is his namesake. 3 vertical claw marks going over his left eye. And a light goatee. He's wearing a loose-fitting white button-up shirt only half-buttoned, purple calf-length shorts, a red sash and a long black captain's coat. He also has a relatively plain-looking saber on his hip. Let's go, Ben. Ben nodded. Hey. Yassip, Lucky. "We're going ashore," Shanks shouted. He received a chorus of "Aye Captain" and "Hooray" as the selected men and Shanks piled into the small landing boat. About 10 minutes later they were beaching their boat. Shanks got serious as he looked into the tree line and called out. "I know you're there is no use in hiding from us. Show yourself now." Shanks called out, hand resting on his saber's handle. Shanks may be a relatively calm and friendly guy, but until he was sure this person was not a threat he was going to be serious. "I think you're 100 years too early to be threatening me, Shanks." Rayleigh stepped out of the tree line, casually walking with his hands in his pockets, approaching his old crew's cabin boy. Shanks and his crew's jaws dropped. His crew shocked to see the legendary figure on one of their islands. They knew he generally stayed at Sabati coating ships. Shanks was nervous, he just threatened his old disciplinarian. He lost count all the time this man beat the shit out of him for some mistake or other when he was a kid. "I'm sorry. Rayleigh said I didn't know it was you, I swear," Shanks shouted. His crew backing away from him in case Rayleigh wanted to punish him. Rayleigh's straight serious face quickly shifted into a smile as he started laughing at Shanks. "Haha, my boy, you haven't changed since I last saw you." "Well, Rayleigh, the reason we're here, we just wanted to see who was on the island. Since it's you, I'm fine with it. But we are kind of curious as to why you are here, not that it matters." "You don't have to tell us," Shanks asked. Making sure to be respectful, he wasn't sure if he could take this man. Not that he wanted to fight the Dark King in the first place. "I picked up something interesting I found in East Blue. A kid, he said some interesting things. So I decided to kidnap him and make him my apprentice. He's working out well so far. You wouldn't believe who he is related to, haha," Rayleigh said. "I'm afraid to ask who is he related to?" Shanks asked. Rayleigh would not bring it up if he did not at least half expect them to ask the question. "The kid's name is Monkey D. Luffy. I'll let you figure it out," Rayleigh answered in a vague way, as if testing the man. Shanks and his crew only took a second to figure it out. I mean, who hasn't heard of the most wanted man in the world that goes double for Garp the Fist? They just stood there flabbergasted for a moment. Rayleigh laughing at their shock uproariously. Shanks came out of his shock and laughed. "Dahahaha. You know how to pick 'em, don't you, Rayleigh-san? How about we throw a party on the Red Force? It'll be fun, I'm sure the rest of the crew would love to meet Luffy." Rayleigh did not even need to consider it. This is exactly what Luffy needs. He's been training hard for a year. A little rest is good for the spirit. "Sure, I think Luffy would like that a lot. Just don't tell him about his father. He knows about his grandfather, but let's not talk about that either. I'll go collect my protege. See you on your ship soon," Rayleigh said as he walked back into the tree line. The grand party was being held on the Red Force, pirates getting drunk and gorging on food. People dancing and generally having a great time. Luffy was telling some people about his training. They would tell him some of their adventures. Yasopp in particular would tell him about his son he had to leave behind in East Blue. Luffy promised that when he started building his crew, he would make sure to head to Syrup Village and try to recruit the boy. Yasopp couldn't even put into words how happy that made him. Luffy decided to look around a little. He went to the bar, remembering Makino's place. He saw a weird-looking purple fruit in a box on the bar. He heard his stomach growl at the sight, so he climbed up on the stool and took the fruit in hand, taking a large bite out of it. He immediately began gagging and trying to spit the vile-tasting fruit out of his mouth. "Ah! What is this? It tastes so bad," Luffy shouted, attracting the attention of several of the crew, including Shanks. Shanks ran up to Luffy and pulled the fruit away. Looking at it, he sighed. Too late to do anything about it now. No need to cry over spilled milk, so to speak, Shanks thought to himself. "It's alright, you'll be fine, Luffy. Here, have a drink." Shanks gave Luffy a glass of water. "You just ate a devil fruit. Do you know what devil fruits are?" Luffy shook his head in the negative. Rayleigh walked up to inform his student. "It's a fruit that give you superhuman powers, but at the cost of being able to swim." "Shanks, what fruit did my apprentice eat?" Shanks asked, glaring at the man for leaving a devil fruit out like that. Luffy was jumping up and down, shouting this and that about having superpowers and how he was gonna be Pirate King for sure now. "It's the Gomu Gomu no Mi, Rayleigh-san. We took off a crew we defeated after they thought it was a good idea to attack a Yonko's ship. Well, it didn't work out so well for them. Sorry, we don't usually have kids on the ship, I kinda forgot it was there. We were simply going to sell it. So it's no real loss to us," Shanks said. If I recall my fruit logic correctly, the Gomu Gomu no Mi should make Luffy highly resistant to blunt force trauma, that will help him greatly. This wasn't a disaster after all. I should be thanking for this blunder, Shanks," Rayleigh said. "Well, Luffy, as long as you don't fall into the ocean or a large body of water, you should be fine. Though Kairoseki will always be a problem," Rayleigh sighed. "This will help his future training, it is actually a great blessing," Rayleigh thought. Several days later. Luffy and Rayleigh were bidding their friends on the Red Force goodbye. They had to head back out and patrol their section of the New World, and as much as they wanted to, they could not stay here forever. Luffy ran to the landing boat and shouted loudly, "I'm gonna be a better pirate than you, Shanks. The old man is making me strong. I'll go out and get a crew and we will beat your crew to one piece. I'm going to be Pirate King. Just you watch me." Luffy caught his breath after that long tirade. Shanks laughed, "Going to beat us, are you? You know, kid. You just might." He took his hat off his head, looked at it longingly before placing it on Luffy's head. "This hat is very important to me, Luffy. I'm loaning it to you. You can return it to me when you are the Pirate King. Okay?" Shanks smiled down at Luffy. Luffy was crying his eyes out. His friend had just given him his precious hat and told him he believed in him. This was one of the best days of his life. Luffy looked up to Shanks and nodded. He couldn't speak right now, so he just nodded, holding the hat tightly to his head. "I'll never let this hat get hurt, I swear it," Luffy screamed in his own head. "Well, Luffy, now that Shanks has left, I think it's high time we get back to your training. Do you agree?" Luffy knew it wasn't really a question, but he answered, "Hell yeah." Placing his hand protectively on his new hat. He wanted to get as strong as possible so he could protect his future Nakama and his hat when the time came. "Okay then." Rayleigh pulled a strip of cloth out of his pocket. "We are going to work on unlocking your Kenbun-shoku Haki. This is also known as observation Haki. It will allow you to see hidden enemies and predict the next attack an enemy will likely throw at you. It is extremely useful in combat." Luffy was really excited about this mystery power. "Okay. Old man, what do I gotta do?" he asked, excitedly. Rayleigh stepped up to Luffy and put the blindfold over his eyes. Luffy couldn't see a thing, no light at all traveled through the blindfold. "Take a seat on the ground. Now I want you to relax your mind, ignore all the distractions and just remain calm. I know it's hard for you, as excitable as you are. But you must learn to do this if you are going to awaken your observation Haki," Rayleigh said. Luffy nodded and did his best to relax and open his mind to the world around him. 2 months have passed. Luffy was gradually getting better. He did not stop his physical training at all. He just did his observation training at night a couple hours before bed. Recently he felt his first trigger of observation Haki. Now we see Luffy once more blindfolded and Rayleigh throwing small pebbles at him. Most of the time he would hit him. But Luffy was starting to evade the objects more regularly. It was a work in progress. But Rayleigh was happy with Luffy's progress. 6 months have passed and now Luffy was 8 years old. Rayleigh had deemed his observation Haki a suitable level to move on to his armament Haki. So he called the boy over. "Luffy, come here boy. It's time we moved on to the next phase of your training. The Busoshoku Haki, it is also called armament Haki. With this ability you can coat any part of or your entire body in an invisible armor. It will protect you from most damage, including your weakness to blades. It will also increase the damage output of your attacks. Be they fists, feet or weapon. There is one more key feature regarding this particular Haki." Luffy was giving Rayleigh his complete attention when Rayleigh flicked him in the forehead, knocking him to the ground where he rolled around crying in pain. "What the hell, old man? How did that hurt so bad? I'm rubber, that shouldn't have hurt me," Luffy shouted angrily. Rayleigh just laughed at his pain. "That's because I used a small amount of armament Haki in my finger when I hit you. It bypassed your devil fruit power and affected you as if you were a normal human. This is the most important aspect of armament Haki. It will allow your attacks to hurt devil fruit users as though they were normal humans. Understand?" Rayleigh asked. "Yes, I get it. Did you have to use it on me though? That hurt so bad," Luffy whined. "You won't be forgetting it, will you?" "Shut up, you sound like a baby," Rayleigh chided. "You are going to learn this ability by brute force. See this boulder?" Rayleigh was standing next to a rather large boulder. "Yeah. I see it, old man. What do you want me to do?" Luffy asked. "Simple. I want you to start punching this rock until your fists are bloody and hurt too much to go on," Rayleigh instructed. Luffy nodded. And the pain began. 5 months have passed. Luffy never stopped his relentless training. Eventually Rayleigh had to make Luffy run laps with heavy rock tied to Luffy's back. He could run laps around the island all day and not get tired otherwise. Luffy did most of his exercises with this heavy rock tied to him. It yielded fantastic results. It was shortly after the 5th month that Luffy was able to form a useful Haki shield around his fist, and when his fist collided with the boulder, well, the boulder was no longer there. Rayleigh patted Luffy on the shoulder and handed him a piece of meat. "Good work, I'm glad to see you finally got it. Let's take a break for now. You can relax for a few days and let your body recover," Rayleigh said. Luffy nodded, he did not want to stop, but a short break sounded good to him. 10 months have passed. Luffy is now 9 years old. As his body matures, it is allowing his muscles to grow at a faster rate. Rayleigh noticed that no matter how much muscle the boy gains, his body does not grow bulkier. This must be another aspect of his rubbery body. It compresses his muscles to the highest form, keeping him slim and flexible. Yes, this is good. I don't think he will ever be too bulky to be fast. Rayleigh thought. Luffy, get some rest. Tomorrow will be an important day for you. Rayleigh suggested. Luffy nodded and headed to his tent. Rayleigh considered what he would do tomorrow. He might ruin their relationship. It will be brutal, but it must be done to see if Luffy has it. Rayleigh decided to call it a night as well. The next day, after Rayleigh and Luffy awoke, Luffy and Rayleigh were locked in a life and death spar. Well, life and death for Luffy, no more than a light warm-up for Rayleigh. Luffy's right arm was broken, hanging limply at his side. His left eye swollen shut. Head bleeding from a scalp laceration. Luffy's vision was fading in and out. Rayleigh had him by the throat with one hand. Is this the best you got, boy? All that time training you? And this is all you had to show for it? I've wasted my time. You're such a disappointment. Rayleigh was releasing small amounts of Hashoku Haki, hoping to spark something in the Luffy's psyche. If this is truly the best you got, then I guess I'll just end your adventure right now. Rayleigh began to squeeze on his throat harder, eyes locked on Luffy's. No. This can't be it. I refuse to lose. I gotta be Pirate King. I promised Shanks. I refuse to go down. Let go of me now. Luffy unconsciously released an enormously potent wave of Conqueror's Haki. It actually startled Rayleigh to a small extent. Not that it was stronger than his, but still Luffy was young, his spirit had unlimited potential for growth. Amazing. That is stronger than some pirate sailing the new world could ever hope to produce. I know how to pick them indeed, Shanks. I think you go some competition in the future. Rayleigh thought as he carried the boy back to camp. He had knocked himself out from overexertion. 10 years have passed since we last seen our rubbery protagonist. The training has been hard. It has been grueling. Sometimes he wondered if it was all worth it. But when he was finally able to get a shocked look out of Rayleigh during a spar 2 years ago, he realized it was indeed all worth it. Their relationship took a small hit after the spar that helped awaken Luffy's Conqueror's Haki. Rayleigh understood. He had to hurt Luffy and put the fear of death into him, one of the best ways to unlock the rarest Haki. But Luffy could never hold a grudge for long. Especially not on his beloved teacher, his grandfather figure. Taking the place of Garp in his mind since he had not seen the man in many years. Rayleigh did not intend to do this, he had great respect for Garp. He was one of the rare good and honorable Marines. But he had sensed a greatness in Luffy that just could not be ignored. Rayleigh taught Luffy more than simply Haki and its control. He had fought with many a Marine in his life. He learned through observation, their most cherished and secret techniques. He taught these skills to Luffy as well. First was the Zoro, which allows the user to move at great speeds for both attack and evasion. Luffy's rubbery body allowed him to excel at this technique, taking it to new heights. The second of the Rocky Shiki techniques he taught Luffy was known as the Geppo or Moonwalk. It allows the user to walk upon the air as if it were solid ground. Rayleigh knew this technique was handy in all kinds of situations. Not all involving combat. Sometimes jumping out of a woman's bedroom when her husband was coming home can be unpleasant. But this technique makes it so much easier. The last technique of the Rocky Shiki that Rayleigh deemed useful to Luffy was the Rankyaku. This technique allows the user to kick the air with such force and speed that it flings an air blade. The air blade is capable of cutting stone and human as easily as butter when performed correctly. There were many times when Shanks came back to see Rayleigh for something or other, or just to see Luffy teach him a few things himself. Shortly before Luffy would turn 17, Shanks visited for the last time. Giving Luffy a saber that resembled his own blade. It was not a named sword, mind you, but just a high-quality blade that would help Luffy on his quest to be the Pirate King. Roughly a month prior. You have grown into a strong and good man, Luffy. I am honored to have taught you what little I could in these 12 years. You soaked up what I taught you like a sponge. I could never find a better student again if I tried. But I think I'm done teaching for a while. I'm gonna head back to Sabati for now. Why don't we catch up when you and your crew are ready to sail the new world? Rayleigh said, a lone tear sliding down his face. Luffy was bowing before Rayleigh. Thank you, old man, I owe you everything. I can do what I need to do to protect my Nakama thanks to you, and Shanks as well. If you see him again, can you give him my thanks? Luffy asked. Rayleigh smiled and nodded. No further words were needed as Rayleigh got into his own boat and rowed off towards paradise. Somewhere in East Blue. A young man with short black hair. He was wearing a red buttoned-up vest, blue shorts with white cuffs at the bottom, and sandals. He has a sword on his side. He is currently napping on his small one-man boat. Looking like an easy target for any threats that roam these dangerous waters, from pirates to sea kings. But should anyone or anything attack this seemingly harmless young man, they would likely find themselves dead in a matter of seconds. This young man is none other than Monkey D. Luffy. Future Pirate King, former apprentice to the Dark King Silvers Rayleigh. The first mate of the Pirate King. As Luffy drifted, his boat bumped into the side of a large luxury cruise liner that was being sacked by pirates. Luffy's attention was piqued at this. He decided it might be fun to have a fight with actual hostile pirates. All those spars with Shanks and Rayleigh don't really count. Except that one. Well, he would never really forget that one, he supposed. Luffy jumped onto the deck of the pirate ship. He took in his surroundings. The ship was ugly as hell. Pink, with hearts everywhere. There was a giant duck's head for the figurehead. Finally, he spotted a man who was talking to a woman. He approached but stopped when the woman rang his bell, so to speak. Being a rubber man meant it wouldn't hurt him, but even he had to cringe a little in sympathy pain. Luffy approached the woman. The woman had short orange hair and was dressed in a white t-shirt with blue horizontal strips, similar to a marine shirt, and a short orange skirt that reaches somewhere short of the mid-thigh, and expensive-looking high heels. "Hey, what's up with you? You aren't betraying your nakama, are you?" Luffy asked. The woman nearly jumped out of her skin. She hesitantly turned around to see who was behind her. She found a young man slightly over 5.5 feet tall. He did not look threatening at all, though he did look strong. "No. I'm not a pirate, I'm just robbing these guys while they're over there robbing the cruise ship. I'm Nami, by the way." "Who are you?" the woman asked. "Oh, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Future Pirate King. I guess I'll take some of this gold too, seeing as you can't carry it all." Luffy grabbed a couple handfuls of the gold. Nami sneered, not liking the idea of a pirate this close to her, but would not risk insulting the man. Her line of work was dangerous enough, no need adding meaningless danger. So she simply nodded and went back to her own pilfering. Luffy dropped his liberated loot into his boat. Just as he finished that, he sensed the pirates all coming back to their boat. He also sensed that the woman had made her get away clean. Luffy turned around to face a whole pirate crew as angry as a kicked hornet's nest. "Who are you, Gaki? What are you doing on my boat? Did I see you stealing my treasure?" the heavy-set captain shouted at Luffy. Luffy just shrugged at the question. "Me? I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Future Pirate King. Yeah, I robbed you. Why? You going to do something about it?" Luffy asked while giving them a cocky smile. Alvida saw red. This punk had absolutely no respect for her or her club. He would learn now. That her name isn't Alvida, the sexiest woman in all the seas. "Man, who is the most beautiful woman in all the seas?" she asked, expecting them all to cower and give her the answers she loved to hear. "You, Alvida-sama, were the usual." "Certainly not you. I've seen beached whales that looked better than you," Luffy said, spitting on the ground at the thought of touching the sea cow. Alvida's fury boiled over. "Men. Kill that man, or I'll kill you," she finally shouted. Luffy laughed, watching the pirates pull out their swords and their pistols, getting ready fight. As the first ones approached, Luffy weaved in and out of their attacks, not even bothering to draw the blade Shanks gave him. It was not given to him to waste on losers that could hardly swing a sword. As he weaved in and out of the attacks, he would punch or kick whoever was close. The number of men Alvida had that were still active was dropping quickly. Luffy seen a small boy cowering behind the mainmast of the ship. After Luffy finished the last pirate, he asked Alvida. "Hey, Hippo. Did you kidnap that pink-haired kid over there?" Luffy hated actual kidnappers. He did not consider what Rayleigh did kidnapping since he willingly left. He also despised slavers worse than most anyone else. And this looked like both. Alvida growled in rage, both at the continuous insults this brat flung her way and the fact that all of her men were face down, unconscious or dead. "So what if I did? I'm a pirate, I can take whatever I want, whenever I want," Alvida yelled. She then turned to the boy. "Koby. Since you didn't help with attacking that man, I'm gonna give you the club." Alvida decided to kill the lazy good-for-nothing slave before killing the punk that beat her crew up. Luffy was having none of it though. He used Zoro to appear in front of petrified Koby. Luffy caught the spiked club in his hand, seeing as the spikes were far enough apart he did not have any risk to his own flesh, and the woman was so weak that he did not even need to reinforce his arm. "I can't stand slavers," Luffy said, clearly angry. Luffy held onto her club as Alvida tried desperately to pull it out of his grasp. Luffy threw his free hand back where it stretched several dozen yards. What are you both?" Koby and Alvida asked at the same time. "I'm a rubber man. Gomu Gomu no pistol." Luffy's fist came forward faster than Alvida or Koby's eyes could track the movement. The fist found purchase in Alvida's abdomen, and Alvida screamed in pain as she was launched out into the ocean. "Hey Koby. You wanna come with me? We are about to have company soon," Luffy asked. Koby paled significantly. He nodded quickly and followed Luffy to his boat. They hightailed it out of the vicinity just before the Marines came to investigate the attack. Short time later, Koby tentatively raised his hand to gain Luffy's attention. Luffy looked at the boy and nodded. "Ah. Was wondering what you had planned to do to me, sir?" Koby asked, his voice shaking in obvious fear. Luffy nodded. It took a decent amount courage to talk to someone who decimated his slaver like he did. After all, he doesn't know if I'm gonna make a slave out of him as well. Luffy thought. "Koby. Let me guess. You think I'm gonna do the same to you as Alvida did?" Luffy asked. He seen the boy just slump over after he made his announcement. Koby looked up at him and nodded. Luffy sighed and felt bad for the kid. "I'm not going to enslave you. No, hate isn't the right word. I despise slavers. I will not take you or anyone as a slave. When we hit Shell's town, you're free to go your own way," Luffy assured the child. Koby's eyes teared up. He couldn't believe it. "I'm finally free. This man, a pirate, saved my life and freed me from that wicked Alvida. I don't even know how to thank him. I don't even know what I can do to thank you, Luffy-san," Koby said. "You could start by dropping that cent crap. I don't care for all those honorifics. As for how you can repay me, I don't need you to repay me. Just live your life without regrets. That's all I can ask of anyone," Luffy said. Koby nodded. "I'll do it. I'll join the Marines in Shell's town. There's a base there, Alvida avoided it like the plague." Koby finally felt some happiness returning to his bleak life. All thanks to a pirate, as funny as that is. "Koby, you said you want to join the Marines, right?" Koby nodded. "You should probably not hang out with me after we dock. I might be known as a pirate since my teacher was a really well-known pirate. It wouldn't be good to be seen with me," Luffy suggested. Koby nodded. Preparing to separate from Luffy as soon as the boat landed. "Again, thank you, Luffy. I can finally start on my dream all thanks to you," Koby said with a hint of admiration. Luffy nodded. The boat carrying Luffy and Koby bumped into the dock at Shell's town, signaling Koby's time to bolt. Luffy chuckled at Koby's enthusiasm. Luffy had heard rumors as he traveled about a truly terrifying swordsman in East Blue that was being held prisoner in the base here. This was the only reason he even planned to stop in this backwater town in the first place, before picking up Koby, that is. Luffy walked through the town. Straw hat covering his eyes. These people reeked of fear and misery. Luffy finally reached the marine base that overseen this town. Walking around the corner, he could see a man bound to a cross-shaped post in the middle of the courtyard. He looked tired, broken even. His green hair dirty and unwashed under his bandana. He wore a white muscle shirt, green pants and a green haramaki. The man slowly raised his head, glared at Luffy and spoke. "You here to mock the dead man? I'm not a circus animal. Leave me to die in peace," Zoro shouted. Luffy jumped over the fence. Approaching the angry swordsman. "What's wrong with you? If they see you in here, they will kill you. This town's messed up. You should get out while you can," Zoro said. "What happened to your Urano, Zoro? I thought you were stronger than this. I came all this way for you and here you are giving up. Damn disappointing," Luffy said, sad that the man was not living up to his image. Zoro grunted. "I was promised to be released in a month, but that stupid bastard lied. He said he's going to execute me and that family tomorrow. He's even got them in the bay so they can't run," Luffy growled. "Corrupted Marines were real trash. I got a deal for you, I don't think you can afford to refuse it," Luffy said. Zoro lifted his head. "Deal? What deal?" Zoro asked. "I'll get your sword, seeing as they are probably in the base as well. Free that family and kill this corrupt Marine. I do that and you join my crew as my first mate. How's that sound to you?" Luffy asked. His hat shading his eyes, giving him an intimidating presence even to the feared swordsman. Zoro took a moment to think about it. "I'll die if I don't take this deal. If I die, then I failed my word on Kuina's sword. I refuse to break my word." Zoro nodded. "I accept. I have 3 swords, but the only one that matters to me is the white one. If you can't get the white one, I really don't care if I die here." Luffy nodded back. They would shake hands when the deal was finalized. Luffy walked to the marine base at a casual pace. Luffy entered the facility and found a lone marine on cleanup duty. He was able to sneak up on him, grab him by the throat. "Listen, marine. Where are Zoro's swords?" Luffy asked. He loosed his grip on the panicking marine's throat. They are in Helmeppo-sama's room. 3rd floor, it's the pink door." "Thank you," Luffy said as he slammed the man's head into the wall, knocking him out. Luffy made his way up to the 3rd floor, using his observation haki to avoid the patrols. He found the room and kicked the door in. On the bed in the room was the girliest man Luffy had ever seen. The man jumped up and shrieked in effeminate fashion. "Ahhh. Who are you? What are you doing in my room?" the girly man asked. Luffy just gave him a healthy dose of Conqueror's Haki. The girly man fell back onto his bed, out cold for the foreseeable future. Luffy found the swords on a desk, obviously being used as a trophy. It disgusted him that a man's swords, his livelihood, would be disrespected like this. He collected the blades and put them in his belt next to his saber. Luffy was now looking for a marine. They seemed far and few between in this base. Luffy eventually found a marine that appeared to be in a rush to get upstairs. Luffy grabbed him and pulled him aside. "No. Whatever you want, I can't help. I gotta get to the roof and help with Morgan's statue, he'll kill me if I'm late." The man screamed in obvious panic. Luffy slapped him upside his head, returning the man to a more normal state. "I need to know where the prisoners are being held. Not Zoro, but the family you guys are planning to execute. Tell me now." Luffy angrily shouted, leaking Haki just enough to make his threat more potent. "They are in the basement. All the holding cells are in the basement. I swear. Please don't kill me. I got a family." The marine begged. "The family excuse is it? Well, I wasn't going to kill you either way," Luffy said as he punched him in the head, knocking him out. Luffy made his way to the basement and found the family there. A mother and daughter. The older woman pulled the smaller one into the corner with her looking frightened at the newcomer. The older woman of average height with soft brown hair and a curvy body. She looked tired and depressed. Understandable, Luffy would assume under these circumstances. The young girl looked to be about 6 or 7. She was sleeping, was wearing a blue and green striped shirt. Her brown hair dirty and matted. "I'm not going to hurt you too, I'm actually here to break you out." Luffy offered a gentle smile. Much softer than his usual carefree smiles. Her eyes lit up at the thought of freedom. "Why are you helping us? Who are you?" the mother asked. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future Pirate King." Luffy answered her. She started panicking at the word pirate. "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. Not all pirates do that stuff." She couldn't really refuse his help at the moment, so she simply nodded her understanding. Luffy pulled out his saber and channeled his armament Haki through the blade and slashed the blade through the lock in the gate. The lock stood no chance against the Haki-enhanced blade, and it was sliced cleanly into 2 pieces. The woman gave each child a gentle shake. "Rika-chan, wake up hun, we are escaping." Rika woke up startled and looked around. "What's happening, mama?" Rika looked at the man holding a sword and shrieked. Luffy looked down and noticed he was still holding his weapon. "Ops. Sorry about that," he smiled apologetically as he replaced the sword on his hip. "Let's go, I'll get you out of here and then I will take care of the marine that did this to you. I promise." The nodded, holding her daughter tightly so she wouldn't scream or panic too badly. Outside the marine headquarters. A few minutes later, Luffy, Ririka, and her daughter Rika made it out of the building. "Here you go ladies, you should get out of here, it's probably gonna get wild soon." Ririka nodded and carried her daughter home as fast as she could run. Luffy cut Zoro loose. "I've freed the girls, I got your swords back, now all I need to do is kill that corrupt marine." "You gonna keep your end of the bargain, Zoro?" "I always keep my word, Captain. But a word of warning before we seal this deal. If you ever step between me and my ambition, you'll be apologizing at the end of my sword," Zoro said, eyes hard as steel. Luffy nodded. "What's your ambition?" Luffy asked. Zoro looked proudly at his white blade. "To reach the top and be the strongest swordsman in the world," Zoro finally answered. "Okay. Sounds good, I wouldn't expect anything less from the Pirate King's right-hand man." Luffy cheered. "I got one more thing to do," Luffy said as his arm wrapped around Zoro's waist. What are you doing?" "How are you doing it?" Zoro asked. "I'm taking us to say hello to Morgan. He's at the top of the tower." Shishishi. Zoro began to panic as realization set in. Luffy's other arm flew up to the top of the tower, grabbing the edges. He pulled himself and Zoro up. "Hhh. I'm gonna kill you." Zoro screamed and Luffy laughed as he flew high into the air. Zoro and Luffy landed on the statue of Morgan as it was being heaved up, shattering it to pieces. Morgan, a large man by most people's definitions with a metal jaw and an axe replacing his right hand, giving him the moniker of Axe Hand Morgan, stood up from his makeshift throne and roared, "Capture them. I will kill them myself." The Marines attempted to follow the tyrant's orders. But even tired and half-starved Zoro was more than a match for them and killed or incapacitated them all in moments. "How dare you peasants oppose me like this? Don't you know who I am? I'm Captain Axe Hand." Morgan was interrupted by Luffy as he cleaned his ear out with his pinky. "I don't care who you are. You're just another piece of shit corrupt marine." Luffy pulled the sword Shanks gave him out of his sash and readied himself for the fight. Zoro checked out his sword. It did not appear to be anything special, just an average-looking saber. Morgan charged in. It wasn't the first time he's had a blade leveled at him. He brought down Kuro, so he was stronger than these nobodies. As his axe descended upon Luffy, Luffy simply raised his sword up, blocking the swing, shocking Morgan. He had put a lot of power into that attack. Morgan stepped back and tried to kick Luffy in the chest with his left leg. Luffy just sidestepped the attack, brought his saber down on Morgan's exposed leg, amputating it below the knee. Morgan's world exploded in pain. Zoro cringed at the brutal efficiency. The fight was over at this point. Luffy loomed over the fallen marine. "Zoro, do you want me to kill this bastard like in the agreement, or is this enough?" Zoro just sighed. "This is more than enough, Captain. I don't think he's gonna be a threat to anyone anymore." Luffy nodded. He then turned to the marines that Zoro did not kill or wound too badly and said, "You can save this piece of trash. Or you can leave him to die. He's your problem now." Luffy and Zoro left the tower, leaving behind numerous shocked marines. Luffy and Zoro were in a restaurant owned by Ririka, the woman Luffy had saved earlier that day. They were stuffing their faces with food that Ririka had gladly gave them for saving her, her daughter, and the town. "Ah. I'm full. That meal was worth not eating for 3 weeks," Zoro said happily. Luffy looked over at Zoro and asked, "That's all you're gonna eat? How can you even eat more than me?" Luffy shrugged. "So Captain, how many crewmates we got? You said you were going to be Pirate King, so you should have a good crew already?" Zoro asked, changing the subject from food to something more productive. "Just you and me for now, Zoro. But don't worry, we'll get more," Luffy answered. Zoro was not really thrilled with the sound of that. "Where is our boat then, Captain?" Zoro asked, fearing the answer. "Right over there," Luffy said, pointing a medium-sized dinghy that looked large enough to seat a few people. But it had a sail and looked reasonably solid. Zoro sighed. "Could be worse, I guess." "Excuse me, Nai-chan, but where are you going next?" Rika asked Luffy. "The Grand Line, but we have to make a few stops and get a few more people before we go there." Koby, hearing this, gasped. "You want to go to the Grand Line? That's suicide, Luffy. That's known as the pirate graveyard for a reason, you know." "Impossible. Impossible. You will get killed." Koby panted after he finished his tirade. Luffy just broke out in a hearty laugh. "Shishishi Koby, you are so funny. You know what some people call the first half of the Grand Line, Koby?" Koby perked up. "What, Luffy?" "Paradise. Haha. I was raised in the New World. Taught by one of the best pirates to ever live. I really think you can stop trying to protect me, Koby. We'll be fine," Luffy said. "So now that the evil marine is out and they cleaned up a bit, are you going to sign up for the Marines, Koby?" Luffy asked. Koby nodded. "Yes, Luffy. I think now that the corruption has been removed, it might be a good time to start on my dream." Moments later, a small group of Marines entered the restaurant. The leader, a tan man with a black goatee, wearing standard Marine attire, stepped to the front. "I am Commander Ripper. Is it true that you are pirates?" Commander Ripper asked. Luffy nodded. "Yep, I just got my first nakama," Luffy answered, no shame at all in his voice. "I see. Well, we appreciate everything that you have done for us. We cannot allow pirates to occupy this town. So we ask you to leave as soon as you can," Ripper stated. Disappointed in himself for having to kick someone he actually admires out of town. His decision was met with anger and shouts of indignation from the people of Shell's town. Shouts of "How could you? They are heroes." And such were heard from the crowds. Luffy just nodded and he and Zoro got up, getting ready to leave. "Hey, isn't he with you?" Ripper asked, pointing at Koby, who was sitting at the table. Luffy just looked at him like he asked a stupid question. "Him? I just met him in town when I docked. He has nothing to do with me being a pirate." "What even gave you that idea, Marine?" Luffy asked, glaring at Ripper and channeling a small amount of his Hashoku Haki at him. The man broke out in a nervous sweat and nodded his understanding. Luffy and Zoro had boarded their boat, a place they would be calling home for a while, and were sailing off into the horizon when they heard shouts coming from the town. They looked back and seen a large assortment of Marines and civilians. Even little Koby was in a Marine outfit. "Luffy. Thank you. Thank you for everything," Koby said as he waved at them parting pirates. "Men. What I am about to ask of you is completely ridiculous and voluntary, but I ask it anyways." Marine salute. And all the Marines saluted the two pirates that were getting farther away. Marines, saluting pirates. Never thought I'd see that in my life. Zoro laughed. As for Koby, I mean Django got into two Marines when he was a high-ranking and very willing pirate. I can't see them having too much trouble with a child was forced to be a pirate slave. A few hours after the two sailed away from Shell's town, Zoro was thinking about Luffy's brutal swordsmanship in the fight with Morgan, if you could even call that a fight to begin with. "Captain, are you a swordsman as well? It might be nice to have a sparring partner while we sail," Zoro asked. Luffy just shook his head. "Nope, I just use the sword from time to time. It was a gift from a good friend, so I like to use it," Luffy answered. Zoro nodded. "Who gave it to you, if you don't mind me asking?" Zoro asked. Luffy thought about it. "He's my nakama, so why not? No secrets between nakama." And in a quick boisterous tone, "Shanks. He gave it to me along with my hat." Zoro's jaw dropped. "Shanks. The Yonko? How does this kid know some big shot like that? Zoro thought. Is he who trained you to be as strong as you are now? It makes sense if he is. Zoro asked. Shanks? No. He taught me some things, but the man who raised me and taught me everything I know is Rayleigh. Luffy answered. Not really putting any importance on the name. Zoro thought for a second. That name. It sounds so familiar. I just can't put my finger on it. You probably know him better as the Dark King Silvers Rayleigh, Luffy clarified. Zoro's jaw returned to the deck of the boat. You were taught by the Dark King. No shit, no wonder you were so brutal back there. Zoro said. Yeah, has been training me since I was a little kid. Luffy said. Captain, can you tell me a little about your devil fruit power? I've always thought devil fruits were just myths. Zoro asked. Luffy nodded. Sure, I guess. When I was 6 I accidentally ate this devil fruit that Shanks was gonna sell. It was the Gomu Gomu no Mi. It turned me into a rubber man. Now I can't swim. Shanks told me there are some that give you the power to change into an animal. The rare ones can make your body become ice or fire. Other things like that. Luffy told him. Zoro nodded. He kinda understood. Elsewhere on the seas there was a small boat that had 3 pirates aboard. They spotted an even smaller boat with a woman in it. She looked weak and helpless. Perfect. The men thought. They did like their woman unable to fight back. As their boat pulled to the side of the woman's boat she looked up. It was Nami. She smiled. Water please. I haven't drank anything in days. You can have all my treasure if I can get a glass of water. She fake begged. The men all leered at her perversely as they boarded her boat to check the treasure chest. She gave herself a mental pat on the back and jumped on their boat, which was faster than the one she was on. There was a dangerous storm coming and she didn't want anything to do with it. The pirates got the chest open to find it empty. Enraged at being tricked they turned to grab the woman that conned them. Only to find her waving at them from their boat as she sailed away. Goodbye. Thanks for the boat and treasure. You can have that boat by the way. Nami mocked the men she had tricked. You bitch. We'll kill you. They shouted at her. Better watch the skies. Small boats like yours are not safe in storms, haha. Nami laughed as some storm clouds started forming, the rain came and shortly after that they got struck by lightning. Their new boat sinking. Hey look. A bird. I'm gonna catch it. Luffy shouted as his arm grabbed the top of the mast. Gomu Gomu no rocket. Luffy shouted. Flying high into the air. Zoro just palmed his face in aggravation. Why does this guy have to be so stupid sometimes? Zoro thought. Luffy grabbed the bird and the bird grabbed his head. This pissed Luffy off, he never likes it when animals eat him, he's the one who eats the animals. Let go of me you bastard. Luffy shouted as he wrestles with the bird, it flew faster towards land in its attempts to get away from the angry human. Zoro watched his captain get carried away by what was supposed to be their dinner. He sighed in frustration and started rowing like a madman in the direction of the nearest island. He heard voices behind him shouting for help, grab on. I won't be stopping. Zoro shouted as he continued to row. The 3 pirates climbed aboard the boat. They were angry as hell at the impolite rescue. You almost killed us. Don't you know not to mess with Buggy's crew, we are going to take this ship. The men approached Zoro who just glared at them. 5 seconds later the pirates were beaten and bloody. As well rowing the boat for Zoro. You made me lose my captain, Zoro said in aggravation. We are so sorry Urano Zoro-sama. We didn't know it was you. We would have never attacked if we knew. They begged for forgiveness. Whatever, Zoro answered, not really concerned either way. What happened to you guys anyways? Zoro asked, hoping to pass the time by laughing at these fools. We were tricked by a devil woman. She offered her treasure in exchange for water, then stole out boats and left us to sink in a storm. We'll kill her if we ever see her again. The pirates raged. Haha, you guys suck. Zoro laughed. Nami was running from 3 of Buggy's pirates because she stole a treasure map of his. They heard an explosion and seen a large bird and some guy falling from the sky right towards them. Just before he hit the ground in what they assumed would have been a fatal impact, he tapped his foot to the air and hovered for an instant before landing. Nami was shocked. It's him again. Is he following me? How did he stop falling like that? Oh shit, I can't worry about that right now. She thought. Hey boss. It's great to see you. You can take care of these guys for me, right? She asked as she ran past him. You guys hear her, this is her boss. If we can't get her, then you'll have to do punk. Let's go, we are taking you to Buggy-sama. The pirate talking to Luffy took Luffy's inaction as refusal and attempted to punch him in the face. Luffy, sensing this coming, dodged and punched the man in the gut hard enough to knock him out instantly. His partners were angry, reasonably so, by at the attack and pulled their swords charging at Luffy. Luffy shouted Gomu Gomu no pistol. As he punched them in the faces, sending flying down the street. Nami had just peeked over the roof to see if the fall guy she set up was actually dead. She was shocked to see that the fight was over and the strange boy was the winner. She noticed that he was waving at her. "Come down. It's alright. Those guys aren't gonna be getting up for a while." He called to her. She nodded and climbed down. "Nami, right. Why were you being chased by those pirates? Did you steal something of theirs?" Luffy asked. She nodded. "Yep, I stole a treasure map from Buggy. But I was caught so I had to run. Now stealing their treasure will be impossible." Nami pouted. "Did you say Buggy?" "Shishishi. I know about Buggy." Luffy laughed. Nami looked at Luffy like he had grown another head. "What does someone like you know about someone like Buggy? You don't seem like anything special to me." Nami asked. Luffy pouted. "That wasn't very nice, Nami. One of my good friends was crewed with Buggy." Nami just stared at Luffy for a moment. "You know he's one of the most notorious pirates in East Blue, right?" Nami asked. Luffy nodded. "Is he? So what though? This is East Blue. Doesn't take too much to be infamous here in the weakest sea." Luffy chuckled. "How about this, we work together to rob Buggy blind. I'll give you a good cut." Nami thought about it for a second. "This pirate doesn't seem as bad as most I've had to deal with." She nodded. "Okay, as long as there's money in it for me, we can work together," Nami said. "But was thinking I can always steal his cut later and double my profit." A while before Luffy and Nami made their deal, Zoro and his new friends were landing at the island. When they hit the dock, the pirates tried to run to tell Buggy about the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro being on the island, but they did not get very far before Zoro took them out. Zoro decided to look for Luffy by simply walking through town. A terrifying thought, I know. He did eventually come across two unconscious men in the road. "This looks like Luffy's work," Zoro thought out loud. Zoro heard a familiar voice behind him. He turned around and found his captain running up to him with a woman. "Hey Zoro. Where you been?" Luffy asked, as if it wasn't the stupidest question in the world. "Baka. I was looking for you. You got caught by that bird, I had to row to town. 3 pirates tried to take my boat because some woman stole theirs." Luffy was laughing while Nami just giggled a little. "Sorry, that was me," Nami said, though she did not sound very apologetic about it. Zoro glanced at her. Nami becoming nervous under his gaze. "This is the infamous Roronoa Zoro after all." "You a navigator, Nami-san? The men that you robbed told me an interesting story." Zoro asked. She smiled brightly and nodded. "Best damn navigator you'll find in East Blue," she exclaimed. "You should get her to join the crew, captain. We will need a navigator soon," Zoro said. Nami looked disgusted at the idea. "We agreed to work together to rob Buggy. Of course after I kick his ass," Luffy said. "Oh, we're gonna fight. Good. I was getting bored," Zoro said. Nami was listening to these two idiots talk about doing incredibly stupid dangerous things as though they were something they did every day. Like it was no big deal to start a fight with a crew as infamous as the Buggy Pirates. "These guys are going to get me killed at this rate," she sobbed in her head. An old man looking to be somewhere in his 60s with bushy gray hair, wearing an orange striped shirt under cheap homemade wooden armor and black shorts, was making his way to Buggy's headquarters at the town's pub. "What are you kids doing here? This town is being occupied, so you should get out," the old man called out to the 3 teens in the street. The 3 teens turned and the one in the straw hat waved at him. "We're about to fight Buggy ourselves, old man. Why are you trying to fight him? I don't think you can win against him yourself. He's not very strong, but he is stronger than you," Luffy said, trying to save the old man's life. "I'm Boodle, the mayor of Orange Town. It's my responsibility to expel this pirate scum. So get out of my way," Boodle ordered. Luffy sighed. He then knocked the old man out with a weak pulse of Hashoku Haki. Nami saw the man's eyes roll back in his skull and Luffy ran up catching him. Not wanting to cause the old man more harm than he already did. "What did you do to him? How could you hurt that old man? Damned pirates," Nami shouted. Luffy just looked at her annoyed slightly. "He was going to get himself killed, so I just put him to sleep. He's fine," Luffy said as he placed the old man on a porch next to a little white dog. It barked at him but did not leave its pet store. "Captain, how did you do that to the old man anyways? You didn't even touch him?" Zoro asked. "It's a mystery power called Haki. I'll tell you about it after we beat Buggy." "Alright," Luffy finally answered. Zoro nodded. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami continued their walk to Buggy's location. On the roof of a large bar that the Buggy Pirates have converted into a base of sorts. "So you are telling me you lost a thief? How worthless are you people? Sometimes I wonder why I keep you around," Buggy shouted at his useless subordinates. "But Captain sir, the thief's boss was super strong. He knocked us out easy." "He may be as strong as you are," the foolish man said. Buggy's eye twitched. His ego not allowing him to believe that anyone in the pathetic East Blue could be nearly as strong as him. He ended the life of the fool seconds after he completed that careless statement. Someone. Find that map or I'll kill all of you and recruit a whole new crew. Buggy ordered. His men were about to scramble when they heard the most taboo words being shouted from in front of the bar. Hey big nose. Get out here so I can beat your ass. Luffy shouted. Buggy became livid. No one used that name in his presence and lived to tell the tale. Kill him. Fire the buggy ball. I want him dead. Buggy's rage was palpable. Buggy's pirates loaded the cannon with a buggy ball and pointed it at Luffy. Nami and Zoro were in different degrees of panic. Zoro just looked a little nervous. He knew his captain was a monster. Nami on the other hand was running back and forth in full-blown panic mode. What are we gonna do? He's gonna kill us all. Nami screamed. The burning wick in the cannon finally hit the powder and it fired. Luffy said gomu gomu no fussin' and took a deep breath, his body inflating like a balloon. The buggy ball hit Luffy's stomach and for a moment everything slowed down. Buggy's eyes widened upon realization the situation has gone sideways. He's gonna throw it back. He's gonna throw the buggy ball back at us. Just as he finished that statement, the buggy ball flew back and exploded the top of the bar. What are you? Explain yourself clearly to me now, Nami said, confused by how a man could do what Luffy just did. Luffy just laughed. I ate the gomu gomu no mi, I'm a rubber man. See? As he pulled his cheeks, stretching them longer than any normal human should be able to. Don't scare people like that, Luffy. Zoro said, casually walking back to his captain's side. When the smoke cleared, only 3 figures could be seen standing. Buggy, who was holding 2 of his crewmates in front of him as shields, Kobaji, the second mate of Buggy holding a giant lion in front of himself, the lion was out cold. Lastly the first mate Moji, who was also holding a fellow Buggy pirate. Kobaji. How dare you use Richie as a shield? Moji screamed at his teammate. Captain. He has a devil fruit power like you. Some of the remaining Buggy crew members shouted, nearly hysterical in fear. This is a big embarrassment, Buggy-sama. We can't let this slide, Captain. Kobaji stated. Dropping the lion to the side. Buggy agreed. Yes, I'm so mad right now that words escape me. Kobaji, you take Zoro, I'll take the rubber bastard. Moji. You take the woman. Buggy commanded. Kobaji and Moji obeyed. Moji charged at Nami, who was looking for an escape route when the Straw Hat Kid appeared between him and his target. His hand reared back. By the time Moji could make a move to defend himself, he was sent flying through a building by Luffy's fist. She's not fighting. Me and Zoro are your targets. Luffy told Buggy. I can't believe it. Now I owe him my life, Nami thought. Thank you, Luffy-san. She felt obligated to say. No worries. Go ahead and get the treasure. I'll watch your back. Luffy cheered. Nami felt a small bit of trust forming in this man. Maybe not all pirates are as bad as Arlong. Luffy stared at Buggy. You ready for your ass-kicking, big nose? Luffy asked with a cocky grin on his face. Buggy pulled out several knives from somewhere. Pointed his fists at Luffy. He called his attack out. Bara bara ho. Buggy's fist separated from his wrists and flew off him at decent speed. Nothing Luffy couldn't handle, so he just sidestepped them and used Zoro to surprise Buggy and hit him in the stomach with an ordinary but powerful punch. Buggy flew back several feet before catching himself. Buggy spit some blood on the ground, growling at the failed attempt. His hands returned to him and he activated the knives hidden in his shoes. Then shouted bara bara senbei, causing his bottom half to cartwheel at Luffy, emulating a circular saw blade. You can't bounce back knives, can you? Straw Hat Buggy shouted. Nope. Can't be done. Luffy grinned. He knew his strengths and weaknesses and he did not mind sharing with Buggy. Because Buggy could not actually use the knowledge to his fullest advantage. Luffy jumped high into the air to avoid the spinning attack from Buggy and Buggy smiled. You can't easily move while jumping. Buggy threw his hands at Luffy again. But Luffy simply uses Geppo to stop his fall long enough to avoid the deadly knives. Buggy looked quite shocked. How did he stop his fall? Buggy was caught off guard as he received a strong hit to the face in the form of a Gomu Gomu no pistol. After getting up and wiping the blood from his big red nose, he shouted. Damn you and damn that straw hat. It reminds me of that bastard red hair. Buggy spat the name as if it tasted as bad as the bara bara no mi did. Luffy's eyes lit up. Shishishi, that's right, you and Shanks were cabin boys on the Oro Jackson, weren't you? Luffy asked. A look of abject terror crossed Buggy's face. If that little bit of information got out, his life was over. He had to kill this man before he left the island. Who told you that? There's only a few people alive that know that little secret, Buggy asked. Luffy laughed again. Oh, I'm just good friends with 2 of those people. Shishishi, Rayleigh and Shanks both told me stories about you. You'd be embarrassed if you knew what I know about you. Luffy mocked the clown. Buggy snapped and was about to charge Straw Hat when he noticed that Straw Hat was no longer there. Suddenly he appeared right in front of Buggy, one hand held up as if aiming with it, the other arm stretched far back. Buggy heard Gomu Gomu no bazooka. Then all he knew was pain as he flew away to parts unknown. Luffy smiled. That was at least a little fun. Getting to make fun of Big Nose. I should have told him a few stories before I set him away. Luffy made his way over to Zoro's fight. Nami snuck into the building that Buggy stored his gold. There was only one guard, out cold with a bottle of liquor in his hand. She used a discarded sword to cut the lock off the door, protecting Buggy's treasure. Her beautiful eyes transformed into beely symbols as she gazed upon the massive pile of gold. She was in the middle of playing with the gold when she heard a voice behind her. "Hey, who are you?" The captain said, "No one's to come in here. Hick say you're kinda cute." The man drunkenly slurred. Nami nearly panicked. But she's been in worse spots before. "Ouch!" she cried. The man's threatening posture quickly changed to a more concerned one. "My chest, it hurts. Could you take a look?" she asked seductively. The man eagerly agreed, giggling perversely. She smirked. Hook, line, and sinker. She pulled out a three-piece staff and ball-checked him, followed by a smack to the head, sending him into blissful slumber. Well, she had a job to do, so she started collecting the gold into bags. A short time later, Nami was dragging a large bag of fine gold to her boat. Once she had that sorted out, she went back for the others. "This is going to take a while, I think." Luffy arrived at Zoro's fight and took a seat on a piece of the bar that Buggy's cannonball destroyed. Several yards away and several moments earlier. "So you are the legendary pirate hunter, Hirano Zoro. You don't look like much to me." Kobaji tried to put up a courageous front. He was a little bit nervous fighting such a well-known and feared bounty hunter. "I've never called myself that, but it is kind of a funny title, now that I am a pirate," Zoro stated. This surprised Kobaji a bit. "You're a pirate? That rubber guy too?" Kobaji asked. Zoro nodded. "He's my captain," Zoro said. "Ha! That fool is your captain. Buggy's gonna kill him." Zoro shrugged. "Not likely. I've seen some of the things Captain can do. Your captain doesn't stand a chance against my captain," Zoro stated with finality, placing his beloved sword, Wado Ichimonji, into his mouth, signaling he was ready for battle. "The infamous Santoryu, eh? I always wanted to see how it would stand up against my carnival tricks." Kobaji jumped on his unicycle and sped towards Zoro. Zoro's face twisted into a disgusted sneer. "Fight me seriously unless you aren't a real swordsman after all," Zoro shouted as he jumped to the side, evading the fire breath attack that Kobaji attempted to hit him with. "But I am serious. This is how I fight." They clashed swords for a few moments, testing each other's strength. Zoro was winning, pushing Kobaji back on his unicycle. Kobaji jumped back while still on his unicycle and started spinning with his sword in the ground, calling out his attack. "Kyakugi. Yukamuri Setsujin Jiken." Raising a large dust cloud. Zoro did not like the looks of this at all, so he jumped far back several feet. "All you did was throw some dust up into the air? Is that supposed to scare me?" Zoro taunted. Kobaji came charging out of the dust in the direction of Zoro's voice. Zoro jumped to the side and got into position for his technique. Soon as Kobaji turned to engage Zoro, he called out his own attack. "Torgari." He appeared behind Kobaji, who was falling to the ground bleeding badly from the chest. Zoro re-sheathed his blades and turned to find his captain clapping. "Damn pretty good fight, Zoro. I think it's time to get out of here though. I want to see how much gold Nami has gotten," Luffy said. Luffy and Zoro made it to where Nami was, and she was filling one of Buggy's boats. It was considerably larger than their current boat, so they all agreed to take it. Not like Buggy was gonna be using it anytime soon. Luffy was laughing as he messed with the gold, wearing the crowns and rings, pretending he was already the pirate king, and these were his accessories. Nami looked annoyed at someone touching what she perceived as her gold. When they were all about to leave the island behind, they heard the old man yelling at them from the dock. Large groups of people behind him. "You brats." It was Boodle that was shouting at them. "It's that old mayor." Luffy, Zoro, and Nami just waited for what the old man had to say. "I always thought it was alright if I died. But you saved me, and for that I can't thank you enough. I'll repay the favor somehow. Someday." Boodle finally shouted at them. Luffy laughed. "Don't worry about it, old man. Take it easy." Boodle just chuckled. "You brats, you damned brats." Boodle thought. Then he looked over at the ground to his left and found a large bag. He opened it and found it to be filled with gold, so much gold he couldn't believe it. He promptly fainted at the sight. Nami had just noticed there was a bag of gold missing from the pile. She looked back at the docks, hat were still barely in sight, and seen the bag there. "What did you do, Luffy? Why is my gold on the island still?" Nami shouted, mouth filled with shark-like teeth. "That guy's town has been nearly destroyed. I figured they could use a little help getting it rebuilt. We'll get more gold, it's no big deal," Luffy said, but was rewarded with a fist to the head. Damn Nami, I didn't know you could use armament Haki. Luffy complained. Nami was confused. What's armament Haki? What is armament Haki, Captain? Is it any relation to what you were going to tell me about after we beat Buggy? Luffy nodded and answered his first mate. Oh, yeah, I was gonna tell you about my mystery power. How did Oji-san explain it? Oh yeah. He explained to me that there are 3 colors of Haki. The color of observation, which lets you see an attack coming before the person even uses it. And it lets you sense people you can't see. Zoro nodded, that did sound useful. Then there is the color or armaments that lets you put an invisible layer of armor around parts or your whole body that can protect you from damage or even better make you hit harder. You can even use it through swords and other weapons. Zoro's eyes lit up at the thought of using this Haki power in his swords. There is one more, but it's super rare. Only one person in a million or something like that can use it. I'm one, it's called Color of the Conquering King, it's what I used on the old mayor when he wouldn't listen to me. It allows someone to use their own will to overpower someone who is weaker than them. Luffy said, rubbing his head. That much thinking caused his brain to hurt. What the hell are these idiots talking about? That stuff has got to be impossible. Seeing things that can't be seen. Using invisible armor. This is all crazy talk. Nami was considering jumping ship and taking her chances. If it wasn't for her gold, she would probably have done so a long time ago. Captain, do you think I can learn any of these skills? Zoro asked, hopeful. Luffy nodded. Of course anyone can learn the first 2, just takes a lot of hard work. You gotta be born with the last one though, I can't do anything about that. But there's not much we can do here. Gotta wait until get to land or a bigger boat first. Luffy answered. Zoro nodded. A few days of long boring sailing later and the crew plus 1 hesitant navigator were nearing a large island. That's Gecko Island. There is a small village there named Syrup Village. I only know because there is a really rich family that lives there somewhere. Nami mentioned. The 2 men nodded and got ready to beach the boat. A young man of about 17 years old. He had a wild afro under a brown checkered bandana, wearing dark brown coveralls, with a slingshot in his back pocket and a large satchel strung over his shoulder. He was running through Syrup Village shouting at the top of his lungs. To the great annoyance of all the residents in earshot. Pirates. Pirates are coming. Everyone evacuate, they'll kill us all. The young man shouted. You would think the people of this village would appreciate the warning. But no, they seemed to be highly agitated and angry instead. Shouts from the various residents could be heard. The general consensus of these shouts. You damned liar. Shut your lying mouth. We'll catch you, Usopp. And so on. Haha. Catch me if you can. The now named Usopp shouted, running down the road away from the town. The boy met up with 2 smaller children that each had a unique hairstyle shaped like a vegetable. Hey. Captain. The Usopp pirates are here. Did you warn everyone in town already today? One of the boys asked. Usopp nodded and smiled brightly. Good morning. Paimon, Ninjin, where's Tamanegi? Yeah, I scared the villagers but good. Usopp proudly admitting to his lying. They suddenly heard a voice in the distance shouting, it's terrible. Terrible. Once the person shouting got closer, they seen that it was Tamanegi. Pirates are coming. Pirates are here. Their boat is near the shore now. He was very tired and very scared. Usopp and the rest of the boys were confused by these claims. Tamanegi, that's a lie. I say it every day. Usopp said. Tamanegi shook his head furiously. No, I'm telling you the truth this time. Usopp gained a terrified expression and shouted something about going for snacks. The boys screamed at him. Captain Usopp. Don't you want to be a real pirate one day? We have to protect the town. It was flying the flag of Buggy the Clown. At the name, Usopp got even more fearful. What Tamanegi said next actually boosted Usopp's confidence. I only seen 3 people in the boat. Usopp stood straight up, putting up a brave front. All right men. Let us prepare for battle. Usopp pirate crew. We will protect our home. The children cheered and they all ran to the beach to confront the pirates. Luffy, Zoro and Nami were stretching their legs as they beached the boat. Luffy was commenting about eating some meat to Nami's ever-present aggravation. Zoro was looking around. Always mindful of his surroundings, as any good swordsman would be. When he heard a rustle in the bushes up on a short cliffside. He instantly became alert, thumbing his treasured blade, Wado Ichimonji. Be careful. We're not alone, Zoro said. Getting a questioning look from Nami and a nod from Luffy. Yeah, I know. They aren't a threat though, so don't worry. Suddenly multiple pirate flags came up out of the bushes. Usopp came out firing a volley of pachinko at Luffy. Luffy casually weaved in and out of them. Usopp finally stopped firing and stood boldly. Hey you pirates. I'm the great Captain Usopp. Leader of 80 million pirates. Usopp shouted proudly. 80 million? Sugoi. Luffy shouted in pure excitement. He's lying, Luffy. Nami said to Luffy. Aren't you Captain Usopp? Nami asked Usopp, cocky smirk on her face. Luffy palmed his face. Of course he's lying, Nami. 80 million people wouldn't even fit on this island. Shishishi. I was just trying to play along with him. Why you gotta ruin all my fun? Luffy asked with a slight pout. You caught me. You saw through my lie, this is bad. Usopp shouted. Seconds later all the flags waving from the bushes fell to the ground in a clatter as the kid's courage broke. Ahhh, don't leave me, you guys. Usopp screamed at the retreating figures. Usopp turned back to face the pirates. Don't laugh at me. I'm a man of great pride. Usopp growled out, loading and drawing his slingshot. Aiming it at Luffy. My skill with a slingshot is better than any pistol. Luffy's entire persona suddenly changed. He lowered the front of his hat so that his eyes were shadowed. Being a pirate isn't all fun and games, you know. Weapons aren't toys. You shouldn't aim a weapon at another pirate unless you intend to use that weapon. If you let that pachinko fly, I will have to respond, won't I? Luffy asked, with his full Pirate King persona going. Usopp's knees started shaking. Sweat rolling down his brow. He finally dropped his pachinko and slingshot. I should have known. I could never stand up to the real deal. Do what you will. Usopp sighed in resignation. Luffy and Zoro laughed. Shishishi. I've been looking for you for a long time, Usopp, son of Yasopp. Usopp's head shot up as if he had been struck by lightning. You know my dad. How is that possible? Usopp asked. Large radiant smile on his face. Yeah. Your dad was with Shanks' crew when they came to visit me and my teacher on our island. He couldn't stop talking about you, Shishishi. Luffy said. Usopp just smiled. You wanna come get some food? My treat. You can tell me some stories about him if you want. Usopp nearly begged. Luffy, Nami, Zoro followed Usopp into town to a restaurant named Meshi, roughly translating to food. Luffy had just got done telling Usopp about the time Yasopp had ricocheted a bullet off 5 surfaces to hit a fly, knocking the wings off of it, yet leaving it alive. Angry, I'm sure, but very much alive. Sugoi. That is so cool. My dad is the best. Did you say he is with a Yonko, red hair Shanks crew? Usopp asked, excitedly. Luffy nodded. Nami turned to Luffy. I still find it hard to believe someone like you knows someone as famous as a Yonko. Nami said, disbelievingly. Zoro raised his hand and counted off. Captain can fly, stop bladed weapons with his bare hands, knock people out without even touching them. I'm sure he's hiding more secrets. I have no trouble believing he knows a Yonko at this point. Besides, he did tell me about Shanks the first day we met. The others were quite shocked. Nami had seen some of these feats, while Usopp had only seen the dodging feat. You can fly? Usopp questioned. Understandably doubtful. Luffy shrugged. It's not really flying, but close. Luffy said. I won't believe that till I see it. Usopp said. Shoveling more food into his mouth. Luffy shrugged. It's not like he had to prove himself to anyone. Hey Usopp, we need a new boat. You know anyone on this island that may be able to help us with that? We have money, so there's no issues with that. Zoro asked. Nami had a few tick marks on her forehead. That's my goal, damn it. Usopp grew thoughtful for a moment. Maybe Kaya-san would be able to help you. But she's been sick and her butler won't let her receive any visitors. Usopp said. Luffy shrugged, he didn't care about butlers. Usopp looked out the window and realized it was getting late. I gotta go. Don't go see Kaya-san. You're not allowed. Usopp booked it out the door as fast as he could. What was that about? Nami asked. Luffy and Zoro shrugged, just as confused as she was. A few minutes after Usopp left, the 3 boys that were with Usopp earlier, Ninjin, Paimon and Tamanegi, ran into the restaurant pointing crudely made wooden swords at the 3 pirates. Where is our captain? They shouted, attempting to be as threatening as was possible for 3 children with their legs shaking. Luffy sighed in contentment at that very moment. Ah, that meat was good. Why did you have to do that? Nami screamed as she punched Zoro in the top of the head, sending him face first into the table. Zoro's head was smoking and had a giant bump. Bewitch. Zoro shouted at her in impotent anger. He would never strike an unarmed woman, his swordsman's code would never allow such a shameful act. So what else could he honestly do? A few moments later the 3 children woke up, they were told the truth and actually laughed at themselves. Luffy asked where their captain went at about this time. Captain goes to tell the Oho-sama lies. They said in unison. Nami looked shocked at this. Zoro as usual shrugged. Luffy laughed. What do you mean he tells her lies? Isn't that a bad thing? Nami asked. The 3 kids shook their heads. No, since she's sick Usopp goes there and tells her stories that make her happy. He's trying to help her feel better. But that darn butler won't let him stay for long. Tamanegi said. Yosh. Let's go help cheer up the sick lady. Luffy shouted. Zoro just chucked at Luffy's attitude. Nami sighed but followed anyways. The kids ran after them. But I want to see Usopp-san. Clahater, why won't you let me? He only wants to help. A pale, fragile-looking young woman that had light blonde hair, wearing a white sundress, asked in exasperation. Your butler named Clahater sighed. You cannot see that ruffian any longer because he harasses the townsfolk and causes no end of trouble. Your health cannot handle the extra stress his lies put on you, Oho-sama. Clahater said. He is a rather slim tall man. He wore a traditional black outfit. His hair was greased and tightly slicked back. He wore extremely thin wire-framed glasses that he was pushing his glasses back into their proper place with the palm of his hand. Outside the gated house's property, Usopp was sneaking about until he came to a slightly discolored section of the hedge fence. After pulling the cutout away, he slid through, replacing it behind him. He climbed a large tree next to an open window. Kaya-san. It's good to see you. You don't look as weak as you usually do. Usopp said, giving her a kind smile. She returned his smile. Usopp-san. I wanted to invite you in as a proper guest, but Clahater wouldn't let me. She pouted. Usopp just laughed. I don't need to come in. This is fine. After all, I am a brave warrior of the sea. Usopp and Kaya laughed together. That remind me of the time I found the giant island goldfish when I was a little kid. Usopp said. Kaya looked confused by the name. Giant island goldfish, Kaya asked. Usopp nodded. The goldfish is so large that when it poops it leaves behind islands. Ha ha ha. Usopp and Kaya laughed at the absurdity of it all. If only they knew. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and the Usopp pirates were all approaching the mansion. The kids pointed at all the guards and fences. That's why we can't get in. Captain has a secret way, but he won't show us. The kids looked down depressed. Luffy walked up to the fence, looked at the height. Nodding to himself. His arm snaked out and grabbed Nami and the kids around the waist, causing them all to shriek in terror at the sight. What the hell are you doing, Luffy? Nami shouted. Shishishi. I'm getting us past this fence. He flexed the muscles in his legs. The intense workouts that Rayleigh forced him to do coming into effect here as he jumped and cleared the 10-foot-high hedge fence as though he was hurdling a knee-high wall. Even Zoro was impressed with the feat of leg strength and followed suit. Luffy and his passengers were shocked further when Luffy used Geppo to stop a foot off the ground and set them down gently. They heard more sounds of surprise from the mansion. He can fly? That's amazing. Usopp said, he could hardly believe his own eyes at the moment. Kaya agreed completely. Are these your friends, Usopp-san? Kaya asked. Usopp turned to her and nodded happily. Yeah. They have come from far and wide to join the Usopp pirates. Can you believe it? Usopp said, but his head fell when he heard a resounding no. From everyone around. Kaya laughed at that. Excuse me, lady. Can I ask a fav? Luffy was rudely interrupted before he could finish his request by Clahater. What is the meaning of this? You people are trespassing on private property. If you do not vacate this property at once, I will be forced to call security. Kaya objected adamantly. Clahater, these are Usopp-san and his friends. There is no need to be so mean. She pouted. Never understanding why her butler did not listen to her wishes. Luffy looked at the man with more than just his eyes. Zoro. Watch out for this guy. He has a lot more fighting power than someone should as a butler. Luffy said, quietly. Zoro nodded. Usopp-san. I've heard about you. I hear about you every day. You seem pretty famous in our small town. Clahater said. Usopp brightened up at this. Really? Well then you may address me as Captain Usopp. Usopp said, proudly. Clahater sighed. Captain, you say? I've even heard stories about your father. Usopp looked excited at this, but Kaya looked angry. Clahater, stop this at once. She begged. Clahater shook his head in the negative. You're just the son of a low-class pirate. Clahater said, raising his voice as he spoke his hurtful words. Luffy's hat was lowering over his eyes as his good friend Yasopp and Yasopp's son were being insulted right in front of him. You need to stop pestering Oho-sama. Usopp glared at the man. You called my father low-class just now. Is that what you said? Usopp demanded. Clahater ignored him. You and the Oho-sama are from completely different worlds. What is it you really want, son of a pirate? Money? How much to get you to leave Oho-sama alone? Kaya shouted at her butler. Clahater. That's enough. Apologize to Usopp at once. She demanded. Yet again her hired help refused to acknowledge his lady's demands. Usopp turned to Kaya, that's dangerous, don't get too excited. He said, trying to calm the feeble girl down. Why should I apologize to such a low-class peasant as this? Oho-sama. Clahater had a dangerous aura to himself now, he sounded angry at his own lady. Luffy stepped forward. Maybe you should stop because your boss told you to. Isn't that what butlers do? What they are told? Luffy asked. The sneer that appeared on Clahater's face could have killed a lesser man. However, Luffy just shrugged it off like it was a gentle breeze. I do what is best for my lady, even if it is not her wish. You all need to get out, there is no need for ruffian scum and the spawn of a pirate on this property. Clahater ordered them to leave. Usopp, using a rope and hook from his pouch, swung to the hedge fence. Fine, I know when I'm not wanted. I'll never come back again. He then jumped past the fence, leaving a crying Kaya, an angry butler and several confused spectators behind. Clahater turned to Luffy and his crew. I thought I told you to get out. Clahater's temper was flaring. Luffy just glared at him from under his hat. This man's arrogance knew no bounds, it would seem. You did. But I don't take orders from butlers. Luffy said, cold as ice. But I will be leaving now. It was nice meeting you, Kaya. He smiled at Kaya. Then he grabbed Nami and the kids and jumped back over the fence. Clahater's gaze following him as he left. That man, he could be a problem for the plan. I haven't felt such a presence in a while. Clahater turned and walked back into the mansion. He had plans to make. So, tell me, where does your captain go exactly when he gets at and stuff? Luffy asked the Usopp pirates. They looked at each other and nodded. Captain goes to the coast and looks out at the ocean, longing for the days he can be a great warrior of the seas. The three boys said in unison as if it was a rehearsed bit. Luffy smiled and turned to his friends. Wait for me here, I'll be going to see our future sniper. Oh, and Zoro. Luffy said, turning to Zoro. Yes, Captain. He asked. You should try meditating while you wait for me to get back. It'll help later. Luffy said as he used Zoro to head off to the west side of the island. His speed was so fast that none of the 5 people there could see him move. Nami blinked and asked what she and the Usopp pirates were all thinking. Did he just disappear? No, he just moved so fast that you couldn't see him move. At least it is what I think. I've seen him do it before in a battle with Captain Morgan in Shell's town. Zoro answered. He is so fast that I couldn't even see him move. I've never seen Arlong move that fast. I wonder if he's strong enough. No. What am I thinking? No one is as strong as that monster. Nami thought, almost slapping herself for gaining hope. Zoro noticed her slightly hopeful face sharply drop. He just shrugged. Not my business, she's not even in our crew yet. Zoro sat down in the traditional meditative position and closed his eyes, calming his mind. He had a decent amount of experience meditating. As a swordsman, a calm spirit is essential. Nami looked at him oddly. What are you doing, Zoro? She asked. Zoro did not even open his eyes, but answered in an annoyed tone anyways. I'm following my captain's suggestion. What does it look like, woman? Nami growled at him, considering hitting him in the head again. But chose not to push her luck with the violent swordsman. Usopp was sitting with his back to a tree overlooking the ocean on a high cliff. He was so out of it that when he heard a twig snap behind him and nearly jumped off the cliff in fright. Luffy laughed as he grabbed Usopp's shirt to stop him from falling to a painful death. Usopp. Why don't you join my crew? We'll have great adventures. Someday I'll take you to see your old man. Usopp was genuinely interested in the offer but shook his head intensely. Luffy looked disappointed. Why not, Usopp? Don't you want to be a real pirate? Isn't this pretend shit getting old? You are a man now. It's time to move on. Luffy said, trying to convince the young man. He had a damned promise to keep after all. Usopp sighed. I do want to go with you, but I can't leave just yet. There is something I need to do first. Usopp said. Luffy nodded. You don't have forever, Usopp, we will move on eventually. Hold on, someone's coming. Luffy looked down and seen that stupid butler meeting a strange man on the beach. Usopp, come here but be quiet, alright? Usopp nodded and crawled over to the edge of the cliff. Captain Kuro. How nice to see you again. Said a strange man in a large wide-rimmed black hat, black trench coat, brown pants. With heart-shaped red sunglasses and a 4 or 5 inch long Egyptian pharaoh goatee. Do not call me that name again, Django. How many times must I tell you? Captain Kuro is dead. Only Clahater will live after this plan is complete. And I don't need your loud idiotic mouth ruining my well-laid plans. The now-named Kuro shouted. But Luffy and Usopp. Captain Kuro. He's a dangerous pirate. I thought the Marines killed him years ago. Usopp whispered fearfully. Luffy just shrugged. Back with Kuro and Django. The plan's right on track, Clahater-san. We will rush the town tomorrow, kill a few people here, damage a little property there, then kill the Oho-sama as you requested. Django said. Confirming Usopp's worst fear. Kuro palmed his face in frustration. You cannot just kill her, damn it. How many times must I tell you this plan? I am beginning to question your ability to carry it out. She must first write a will, naming me as Clahater, not Kuro. As her sole heir, and then she can die, but only in an accident. Do you understand? Kuro shouted, losing his patience with the backwards man. Django nodded. Yeah, boss, I got it. Clahater, make will, and then accident alrighty. We'll start the raid tomorrow at dawn, sound good? Django asked, wanting to get away from his angry boss as soon as possible. Kuro wanted to strangle the man, he heard his near slip. You better get this right, Django. If you mess up my plan you will beg me for death before I am through with you. You hear me? Django nodded, sweat pouring down his face at the cold as ice threat that he knew, without a shadow of a doubt Kuro would carry it out. What are we gonna do? What am I going to do? I gotta warn the town. They could all die. Kaya-san. I gotta tell her. Luffy used a small amount of Conqueror's Haki on Usopp, breaking him out of his self-induced panic attack. Usopp's eyes darted around trying to locate the source until they landed on Luffy, who looked a little too intense at the moment for his liking. Why you did that didn't you? What was it? Usopp asked. Yeah, I did it, had to, you were freaking out on me. It's just a special power I can do. If you join my crew I'll tell you about it. But what are you gonna do if you tell the townspeople? Don't you do the same thing every day? What's the difference this time? Luffy asked. Usopp wanted to scream in his helplessness. I don't know. But I can't do nothing. I'll lose all my friends, Kaya. I can't lose her. He sniffed, wiping tears away from his eyes. Luffy suddenly understood. You like her, don't you? Luffy asked. Usopp could only nod. I understand. We'll help you protect your Nakama Usopp. Then you can become our Nakama. Okay. Luffy shouted. Usopp's eyes lit up. You would do that for me? But you hardly know me. Why waste your time with me or with this town you just arrived at? Usopp asked. He never thought a pirate would consider helping someone like him. Because we're friends. That's all the reason I need. Let's go, we'll meet up with Zoro and the others and plan the attack. Luffy cheered, his love of a good fight showing. Usopp cried tears of happiness as they ran to meet with the others. Luffy kicked a sleeping Zoro in the side. While Usopp woke Nami and the others a little more gently. Zoro grunted as he woke up. What the hell, Captain? Why the hell you kicking me while I'm asleep? Zoro asked in indignation. Luffy laughed. The better question is why were you all sleeping in the street? Luffy asked. Zoro looked around realizing Luffy was right. Then it hit him. Some weird guy hypnotized us. Making us fall asleep. Zoro said, describing Django. Luffy nodded. We've seen him and he was working with that bastard butler. But the butler is actually a pirate named Kuro, a pirate that was pretty famous a few years ago, at least that's what Usopp tells me. Luffy said, not really concerned at all. Nami looked a little surprised at the name. Kuro? As in Kuro the Thousand Plans. That guy was a tough pirate, he was said to be able to plan 1,000 moves ahead of the enemy. His bounty if I recall right was 16 million. Nami shouted. Thinking they were all going to die if they fought such a dangerous pirate. Luffy thought about that for a moment. That's a pretty good bounty for East Blue. Luffy said offhandedly. Zoro nodded in agreement. Nami thought it was concern. That's right, it is. He'll kill us all if you fight him. Nami said, trying to talk sense into them. I wonder if my first bounty will be better than that Shishishi. Luffy said, completely ignoring Nami's concerns. Nami punched Luffy in the head, sending him face down into the dirt. Her teeth looking suspiciously like a certain sawshark fishman she hates very much. Yeah, Captain. It better be. Otherwise I may have to assume command. Zoro said, ignoring his captain's predicament. Enraging Nami even further. Luffy got up, brushed his clothes off and laughed. Shishishi. Yeah, I can't be looking bad in front of my first mate, can I? Nami just gave up. She couldn't win with these idiots. Well, we're gonna fight Kuro and his crew tomorrow so they can't hurt Usopp's girlfriend. You gonna be ready, Zoro? Nami, Usopp. Zoro nodded, he was always ready for a fight. Nami looked affronted. Hell no. I ain't fighting a bunch of bloodthirsty pirates. I'll rob 'em though. She shouted as her eyes turned into beely signs. Usopp jumped back and turned to the male members of the crew. Does that happen often? He asked. Pointing at Nami's eyes. Luffy and Zoro nodded. Yeah, whenever the witch thinks about money, Zoro was the first to answer. Nami tried to punch him again, but Zoro saw it coming so he stepped aside. Nami growled at him for dodging what was in her opinion his rightful punishment. Luffy laughing loudly at the two arguing. Let's plan the battle already, you guys. It's gonna be dangerous. What do you guys do exactly? Usopp asked. I steal, Nami said. I cut, Zoro said. I stretch and beat people up. Shishishi. Luffy laughed. I hide. Usopp said as though it was a great skill. They all turned to him and shouted. Not this time. You'll help. It's your town you want to protect, right? Usopp nodded, slightly ashamed of himself. Nami turned to Luffy. The next morning the Straw Hats plus Usopp made it to the slope that led to the beach, where the Black Cat pirates were disembarking their ship with Nami and Usopp trailing behind. Zoro drew his blades and got himself ready for battle. Luffy lowered his hat, glaring at the men down on the beach. Black Cat pirates. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Future Pirate King. And I'm here to stop you from hurting Usopp's friends. Luffy shouted. That is the end, so, thanks for watching. Comment down below with recommendations on what fanfic I should do next. And remember to like and subscribe to my channel.